very open about my concern with business to business. And with the governor, actually was at the Swin West Chamber breakfast when he announced that he was going to drop it. Right after I didn't know he was in the room. At that point, I knew he was going to speak, but I didn't know he was there yet. And I actually was having the conversation how I had the big concern on the impact to business. And shortly thereafter, he heard my comments and went up. And not that I'm taking a little credit for it. Shortly thereafter, he said he was dropping it, and it's funny, a little sidebar. I tweeted as soon as I heard it because I thought that that's what he said. And apparently, I was the first one who tweeted it, even before the media. So we had people just, Senator Franzen saying, you know, how do we validate her comments? So I got like 40 extra followers. Now people think I'm in the know. But anyway, but I did have concerns with business to business. You know, my background, I work at Target, I work in corporate, and I heard a lot from business community, especially in our community, that have ties to the business side, and it just wasn't a good direction for our state. The Senate side, which just came out this week, they still propose broadening the sales tax to, and I'll just quickly glance at some of the areas. One is clothing, and no price threshold, all clothing, including, and there's an income tax credit offered for those in the lower bracket of income. There's taxes on motor vehicle paint, digital goods, direct satellite services, remote access software, admissions to stadium boxings and suites, over-the-counter drugs that are not prescribed, personal services like hair, nails, tattoos, wedding planning, dating services, shoe shining, cosmetic surgery, personal instruction of dance, golf, tennis. Just so you know, just so you're informed. And this is just a proposal. How this works is we propose and then you negotiate. So this is not a done deal, but it's good that you know what the Senate's proposing at this point. Auto repair services, household goods repairs and maintenance, electronic and commercial equipment repair and maintenance, warehousing and storage services, telecommunication equipment, custom software, court report documents, publications excluding newspapers, and sports memorabilia. That's the extent of the sales tax broadening. So if you have concerns there, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how that impacts you. But what the purpose is to have these proposals on the table to really find a way to try to reform the tax code. So there's going to be long discussions on this proposal, but that's just the sales tax piece.
Okay, we're going to move to a question about, I guess, related to the environment here. Question is from Kathy Iverson. Question, or you want me to read it?
Read it.
Okay.
Thank you.
What are you doing to pass the renewable energy standard bills and a moratorium on frac sand mining?
Well, there's a few proposals in the Senate on frac mining, and frankly, I haven't kept abreast of all of them. There's mainly Representative Matt Schmidt from Red Wing, who's the main author. My only concern is making sure that making sure that our water supply isn't impacted, that we take care of the environment and we do it responsibly. So as long as we do that and are assured of it, do we have to take a step back and have a moratorium? I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but we definitely need to make sure that we're protecting our water sources and our environment for future generations, that's for sure. And then the other one is the energy standards. I support them, but we have to work with all the stakeholders, making sure that it's workable. So I know that there's many different competing interests, and we've got to make sure that we take all that into account to do something that doesn't increase our energy prices at the consumer level, retail level. So I know there's been controversy whether it's going to raise it $4 or more. Actually, what I've heard from experts is that it's probably going to be $0.25. So there's a lot of information out there. Don't believe everything you hear until you really do the research. So it's one of the things that I believe in energy is that we do need to have diversity of sources, and they all complement each other. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. They all have their pros and cons. It's a matter of how do we set ourselves up for the future and some energy independence that we surely need to think about.
I agree that on the frac mining, we have to make sure that our water is protected. It's going to become our most scarce resource in the next generation. So I would support making sure that we know what we're doing and not go ahead until we don't. And on the standards, I just had a meeting yesterday with a company called Geronimo Energy, in Edina, and they primarily are a wind company, but they're starting to go towards solar. And they really gave me good education on why we need these standards. And so I am at this point supportive, even though I do not sit on the Energy Committee and have not seen the bill. But we do have to work with rural Minnesota to make sure that it works for everybody.
I'm going to change the subject and tell you a happier note. The state revenue forecast, as you know, we start from the February forecast, and that's the way we build our budget for the next biennium. And even though there may be positive changes in the state income as we move along, we don't change the forecast. We don't change the forecast. We look out the February forecast. But in February, there were $145 million worth of improvement over the forecast in February. And income taxes, these are variance, 57 million plus, sales tax 22 million plus, corporate tax 47 million plus, and other miscellaneous 19 million plus. That's 145 million. If that continues on, and they're not expecting that it will continue on the forecast says that's going to level and not go up very much. But it's a very positive note for the state, which will aid in the repayment of the school $854 million we owe the schools. And I was talking to you then just briefly. The property tax and local tax division did report out to the full tax committee, and they are doing several things that will aid in the property taxes. They're increasing local government aid, and they are going to broaden those of you that have incomes that don't match your property taxes. There's a circuit breaker. There are about half the people that are eligible that don't apply for it, but it is available, and they've upped the amount of money that's available. There's another one that started, and they didn't do anything with that, but I think they're going to make an effort to get everybody that's eligible for money this year.
All right, we have time for one more question before we do our wrap up here. This question is from Betsy Wolf.
Go for it.
Okay. What are you looking at to cut state spending? On Mr. Erhardt's survey, more people wanted to cut spending as soon as part of their survey response. All right, so I guess the question has to do with what are you looking to cut?
Well, you know, from my vantage point as a freshman, you know, I came at this job with the, you know, there's got to be something we can reform, cut. It's not as easy as it just seems at first blush. On the health and human services side, we're proposing $150 million in cuts, and it's that I'm learning. It's probably not where we want to cut, because that's where we end up cutting at the level to balance our budget. That's usually where we end up, and we're talking about people who are disabled, people who are vulnerable, and it's just, you know, pretty inhumane when you really peel the onion and delve down and one of the things that we're asked to do to meet these targets. So that's a stark area. I would challenge anyone here or in the business community that can really tell us where particularly we can cut. I'm open to finding those areas, but the government is a pretty large entity, so it's not as easy as you would think. And we've been cutting for the last decade on a lot of areas, particularly HHS. So there's a lot of pent-up demand now that the economy is starting to pick up, that we need to start making investments versus cut. So we're at a really interesting point, a challenging point in our state budget historically, and it's going to be really tough to meet that $150 million cuts in HHS. So if people have expertise or have ideas that can really point, because it's easy to say be able to cut, but it's easier to say it than do it. So I would really challenge folks to also be able to provide their expertise to help us find a way to cut where it's sensible, where it needs to be, and we can't do it all. We'll never have enough resources in our government to pay everything we want. That's the reality. But the priorities, and right now saying that we have to find those cuts in HHS is pretty sad. So that's kind of where I stand, but that's the reality.
chair of the House Redesign Committee, which is a bipartisan group that is going to look at just about every agency and see if we can find efficiencies. And we're starting to meet in the next few weeks, probably after session ends this year. So we can go into the next session with lots of ideas of how to make it a stronger state, a leaner state, and provide the services that are important.
On our survey, I warned you that this is a very small sample and not scientific. I don't know if I had 1,200 people, the normal flow that I might get, this might change. But I know that the proposition has been $150 million out of Health and Human Services. I don't know what areas are going to trim, but that's what the target is. Now, the two biggest agency spending patterns are Health and Human Services and Education. So if you're going to cut things, be prepared for a cut in schools or in nursing homes. K-12, higher ed, or what else is nursing, besides nursing homes? PC, PCA. The rest of the budget is minuscule compared to those two giants. And when you talk about government spending, you're talking about services. You're not talking about, the government is still, in the past 20 years, it hasn't changed. It's about 11% on the dollar that it costs government to run. It's the services that everybody wants, and everybody screams when they get cut. That's what the cost of government is. Whatever they may be that have been built, and I'm sure everything can be trimmed down, and they have trimmed things down. When I was there 5 years ago, we had a third more of the staff than we have now, and they whittled that down. If you had a committee, you got a full-time administrator. Now, a lot of the committees share a committee administrator. So the cutting's been going on, and I can see it. And that's in government, not the services.
No, I'd like to note for everybody that we are out of time. However, because we started a bit late, I'd like to know if legislators wouldn't mind staying for a couple more questions.